Let me quickly introduce the colleagues. Ladies first, Martina Weimert is the CEO of the European Payment Initiative. I think very well known as they recently introduced Vero in the market. Prior to being with EPI, Martina spent, I guess, at least a decade, maybe 2 decades in consulting at Oliver Wyman, advising companies across the entire payments value chain. Then we have Olivier Martinon, who is leading the Central Europe and the Northern region from a sales perspective for Thales. Thales is a leading producer for card solutions, both physical and digital. We have Robert Bueninck, who is the CEO of Unzer, a pan-European payment service provider serving more than 85,000 merchants. Before being with Unzer, Robert has spent time in leading positions at Klarna, Bill Pay, and so forth. And last but not least, we have Fernando Rodriguez from Bizum. He is the International Business Officer of Bizum, Bizum being a local scheme in Spain, very successful now for almost 10 years. And on top, Fernando is also working with the European Central Bank as a member of the Market Advisory Group for the Digital Euro. As you all know, the European payment landscape is very much in transition, right? Cash is declining, cards is, I would say, stable, but we see alternative payment solutions coming into the market. Buy now, pay later, obviously, is a topic, and I think on the horizon, we have CBDCs like the digital euro. Yeah? We try to make a little bit of a journey through these topics in the next 50 minutes. Yeah? And I want to go directly into it, starting with you, Martina. You know, European Payment Initiative has introduced Vero in the market mid last year. You're now live for a little bit more than 6 months. How is your perspective on the alternative payment methods landscape in Europe, and you know, how will Vero change this? How will Vero become successful in that landscape?
It's okay? Yeah, great, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's a crowded space, first of all. There is a lot going on, and not only the buy now, pay later, there are all the national solutions, mobile, digital solutions. There is the instant payment hype, there is open banking initiatives, and there will be way more. I mean, there's the whole wallet movement, and what we see right now is that there's a lot of combination of these aspects. What is maybe different is some of them really consider themselves as an alternative to cards, like we do, or they are based on cards. So it's nevertheless, yeah, a mixture, I would say. So a very fluid concept, that whole alternative payment method, I would say, and that makes it not very easy for the consumer, but also for the merchants to choose. But I think what is really changing is with the instant payment regulation, because we have there one regulatory framework. It's maybe not perfect, not every question is solved, but at least all the banks have to implement it. And there, of course, the question is, do you consider it just as a regulatory constraint, or do you consider it as a commercial opportunity? And that is where we think that there is a tremendous opportunity which we want to leverage, and that is what we are trying to do with Vero, because we think you can replace any retail payment or any payment a retail person has to do through instant payment. You can do P2P, you can do e-commerce, you can do P2Pro, you can do point of sale, you can pay invoices. So it's limitless. And combined with QR codes, I think you can even address other payment situations where before you always needed a terminal. So I think that has a huge potential, and that's how we see that this could be of interest for Europe. But of course, it's a journey to get there. And therefore, we think that it is important to go that journey and to implement all these use cases, because ultimately all this has to come together in what we call the all-in-one wallet concept. Me as a consumer, I don't want to have a fragmented usage. I want to have one functioning which I can apply for all my use cases. And I think that is very attractive, combined with a second aspect that we are leveraging, which is the service component, because today nobody just wants to pay. We want to get something out of it. So we are catering for things like subscription management, which we think is super important in a worldwide economy which is moving into the subscription space. So things like this, or integration of merchant loyalty programs, because these are things which the consumer hasn't got so far. So we try to tap existing needs, but also uncovered needs and new potential. And that's how we think, but combined with this really ongoing trend in Europe towards the wallets, with this great regulation in place, that we have the basis to build something really meaningful for whole Europe.
Thank you very much for giving us your perspective on how Vero will be successful in Europe. If we look to Spain, Fernando, right? Bizum has been introduced, I think, in 2016. You are very successful in Spain. I think more than 25 million users. It has been set up as a joint solution by more than 35 banks, right? So how do you look at this changing landscape? Can Bizum be a blueprint for Vero? Or do you view Vero maybe as a danger towards Bizum? How is your perspective on the changing landscape?
Well, I'd say that in the end, we're following the same principles, right? So I'd like to highlight three components. The first one is collaboration. In the end, this is a bank-driven initiative. As you say, more than 20 banks in the beginning decided to create this on a joint effort. And this has been key for us. I mean, in the end, the service is embedded in the banking app, so we just define the principles of the service, and then banks integrate it in their own channels. We are a very small team. We're only 12 people, so in the end, we try to manage and engage with our partners, the banks, and with other PSPs, because in the end, those are the ones selling and commercializing the service to the others. The second pillar, it will be instant payments. In the end, there was a bold move from the Spanish banking sector in the beginning, because 8 years ago, as you're saying, instant payments were not still as much developed as today. And this year, principally, mainly with the instant payment regulation. But in the end, what we achieved is that we were pioneering instant payments for all use cases. So this is something that we were the first ones doing this, not only P2P, but e-commerce and point of sale. Also launching cross-border. You mentioned Spain, but also we are present in Andorra. Andorra is a very small country, but we proved that instant payments can work cross-border. For Spain, cross-border is not that relevant today, but for Andorran population, 40% of the transfers are cross-border. So for them, it's a really huge value-added service. And the last one in this sense is interoperability. We know that there are all solutions in Europe that are working towards instant payments as well, and what we are doing is trying to leverage the existing capabilities. So we're working also with Portugal and Italy in that regards. And the last pillar is the value-added service. In the end, instant payments per se, it's a good thing. It's a pan-European rail, but in the end, it's not enough in order to offer a competitive user for merchants, for consumers. So in the end, we leverage the capability to link the phone number to the IBAN, so you can enhance the user experience. As you were saying, today, almost 29 million users are active users in Bizum. This means more than 80% of the adult population in Spain. So this is huge. This is the second largest network after WhatsApp. So for us, it's a big success, taking into account that we are only 12 people, because in the end, this is a bank-driven initiative and they are the one building the service. And not only incumbent banks, because in the end, we already have banks like Revolut and N26 part of our ecosystem. And the last thing that I want to mention is that once we launch, and this is also similar to Vero, we launched P2P, then e-commerce, then eventually POS. And what we've seen is that building this great customer base, it was thanks to great user experience and the word of mouth. I mean, in the end, we didn't spend that much into marketing. Bizum today is a verb in Spain, and today many merchants are requesting Bizum as the payment method as an alternative payment method into their checkout process. And today, Bizum for very large merchants is already representing 30% of the total payments. So what we've seen is that it was a very nice move from the Spanish banking ecosystem, because in the end, today, for example, PayPal is not longer that second alternative at the e-commerce, for example. Today, Bizum is, and eventually what we see with solutions like Wiro and Bizum and other solutions in Europe, that we can come up to a sort of a collaboration fostering pan-European infrastructures and instant payments.
Thank you very much. When we talk about alternative payment methods, we can, of course, in Europe not neglect buy now, pay later, right? This is a very important and also very popular payment method, in particular in e-commerce. So, Robert, you spent a lot of your time at Klarna before you came to Unzer. What's your perspective on the buy now, pay later market in Europe, and how will also the upcoming European Consumer Credit Directive potentially influence that?
Thank you. Yes, we also have a great buy now, pay later product at Unzer, by the way. So I think buy now, pay later is still Europe's most popular alternative payment method, right? And it is that because it solves one of the main fundamental needs a consumer have when they buy online. It solves for safety, right? There is no better buyer protection than if you haven't actually paid for the goods yet. You can make sure that the goods arrive, you can make sure that the quality is what you expected, and only then you need to pay, which of course solves for the buyer protection in a perfect way. And I think that will continue to make buy now, pay later for some use cases the best product. And I only believe that it will continue to grow as it has been growing. Having said that, I do see that there's some trends that are changing in the market. Some of the players are moving much more into becoming a consumer brand with a consumer first initiative, and some other players are moving much more into to solving the merchant part of things and less towards the consumer. So where I see it evolve is that there's multiple players that you'll see alongside each other to check out, rather than the merchant picking just the one. Depending on the preference of the consumer.
Very good. Linking that to the card space, and Thales is one of the largest producer of cards, also engaged in personalization of cards. Olivier, what's your perspective? How will all that developments that we see around the alternative payment methods, how will that influence at the end cards, right? What's the impact on credit cards, but also on local card schemes like Carte Bancaire or Girocard?
It's a question we get a lot, to be honest. I mean, the physical card tends to be the dinosaur in the room. So we tell, okay, your product will disappear within a few years. The reality today, in the number of cards that we make more cards today than we ever made. In Europe, it's a stable number of cards that we issue. It's not decreasing yet. What we see, though, is that we see the number of digital cards we issue growing very, very fast. And the usage is growing faster on digital cards than on physical cards, right? Now, what we see in terms of trends on the physical card market and digital card market is that the fintechs or the neobank a few years ago actually drew a lot of business for us, a lot of more volumes and different type of cards. Basically, people were opening other accounts. They got a new card. They got a metal card. They didn't get a PVC card, an old-fashioned card. They got a new card that was fancy and nice to hold in your wallet. This has created a lot of traction on the market today. And the traditional issuers are actually issuing those cards as well. The new cards that we issue today are more sustainable as well. We can think about recycled PVC, PET, whatever. Wood card is another card coming along. At the end of the day, what we see is that users want to be in control of the payment instrument they want to use. Yeah? So when you are a new subscriber to a bank account, you want to be in control. You want to have an app where you will be able to select your payment method. You want a payment method issued to you right away. So virtual card is the best way to go. And then if you decide to do so, you can buy your card on your mobile phone as well and say, I want a metal card. I'm paying 10 euros a year for it, whatever. And I will get my card a few days later at home. So we see the world of physical and digital card mingling around and being merged together. And I think they will evolve together hand in hand moving forward.
Yeah, thank you. Robert, at Unzer, you help merchants accept payments, right? And the landscape in Europe of payment methods is quite fragmented. If you're not an insider industry, maybe also a little bit complex. How do merchants look at this emerging landscape, and how do you help them to navigate this landscape?
But I think the simple fact that it's complex and ever evolving with lots of new initiatives is also what keeps it interesting, right? So that's what makes being in payments fun. I think merchants, at the end, they just want to feel that payments are handled securely, quickly. They would like to get their money as soon as possible. But last but not least, they want to offer what the consumer wants. It's all about conversion. It's all about getting their customers to pay in an easy and secure way, right? So we have the responsibility to, at one side, help, advise, and guide our merchants to what is best for them and how they can get the most out of their checkout experience or their in-store experience. And at the same time, when new things pop up, when there's consumer demand, merchant demand for new payment methods or initiatives, we have the responsibility to make sure that we can bring it quickest to them, right? So I think that's where new tech really helps. Having a brand new platform without much legacy allows you to be much more agile and nimble and be able to launch these new initiatives at a quicker pace, and with that help our merchants.
Very good. You know, Martina, you mentioned at the very beginning that an important basis for Vero is the instant payment regulation, right? And you said it's not a perfect regulation, but it's good that we have that regulation, right? What's your perspective on instant payments? How will that regulation at the end change the adoption rate? Do you see a much stronger role for instant payments in the next 3 to 5 years in Europe?
Yeah, I mean, why is instant payment not more used so far? Honestly, because you can't use it in commerce. You can only use it for account to account, person to person. And that's exactly where the regulatory space ends. I think regulation can and should only do so much. Now it's up to the market to come up with solutions. And when I say solutions, what people often forget is, as soon as you enter the commercial space, you need to have clarified what are the roles and responsibilities, the liability cases. You need a fraud prevention solution. You need this full set of rules. You need a business model. So you need, a framework that you can operate with. And that is what, I mean, the card schemes have built up for years, for tens of years, and which now we have to do for instant payments to make it equivalent, if not better. And therefore, I think we can use the regulation as a basis, but the important part now is to build solutions that can work in commerce, so that give everybody the right framework and the liability framework that they're looking for, because otherwise, how do you do refunds? What is the rule set behind it? So the regulation there is not enough. So I think that is something we need to understand, and that's why it's a certain effort to get there. But I think it's definitely worthwhile, and we can look at the worldwide trend. Account to account is an absolute massive trend worldwide, all over the globe. I think the only area where maybe it's still underdeveloped is Africa, but otherwise in Asia, in Latin America, in North America, you see these initiatives and developments all over, and they're very, very successful. So I think, yes, it will take the time, and we like to be in a regulatory safe space in Europe, but definitely the trend is there, and I think it's more up to the European market to organize. For us, for example, what is crucial is the cooperation, not only with the banks, but with the acquirers, who are also part of them, our shareholders, and with the merchants, right? So this whole, let's say, ecosystem build up, that is what is needed to make it successful, because the consumer will only take it when this certain framework is there. Otherwise, it gets stuck at a P2P solution, and that's not what we want, right? So if we want to harvest that full potential, we need to set up this full ecosystem and all the features that are needed, framework, regulatory-wise, rule-wise, and the fraud prevention. Let's not forget that dispute management, consumer protection, all these things are needed, and people tend to forget that when it comes to a realization of a real new payment method.
Yeah. Thanks for that perspective. And you stressed very much that it is important to make instant payment available for commerce. Robert, what's your perspective on that? Do merchants really wait for a POS solution based on instant payments, or are they already satisfied with the solutions they have? How do merchants see that?
Well, we have to look at what the added value is for merchants, right? I think the added value for a merchant of an instant payment would be that they can receive the funds instantly, rather than having to wait for the four-scheme system to pump money around for a few days. So that could be an advantage, but at the end, you know, they're not as much into the detail of payments as we are, right? They would just want to provide their customers with a solution that works, it's simple, and converge for them.
Very good. You know, Fernando, also Bizum is based on account-to-account payments, yeah, as a basis. And you work, as I said earlier, very much with the Spanish banks, right? More than 30 Spanish banks that are in that cooperation. How do banks, based on your conversations that you have, view this instant payment regulation in the European Union? Is that an opportunity from a bank perspective, or is that more a threat? For example, if I think about the regulatory need that batch payments and instant payments are on par in terms of fees. What's the perspective of banks?
Well, I'm very aligned with what Martina said. I mean, indeed, regulation is not enough in order to make instant payments successful in Europe. You need many more things. And in this case, what our experience is just that. So, on average, instant credit transfers in Europe is 20%. So, not so many countries have adopted massively instant payments. When you look to Spain, the average is almost 55%. So there are more instant credit transfers than regular credit transfers. And 90% of those are driven by Bizum. So in the end, we understand that you need much more than just the regulation itself in order to boost adoption. Today, Bizum is very well known. It's a very well known brand, and we've built these acceptance brands starting from P2P. So when we drove customer growth through P2P, the merchants are starting to realize that it could be also a good way to just increase their checkout opportunities, so increase conversion, transaction success rate. So in the end, they were demanding Bizum into their checkout process. And we've experienced during this time that, of course, you need everything what Martina said. So refunds, disputes, we've built everything on top of the instant payment rail. So you need much more than just the mandate that all PSPs in Europe need to accept and receive instant payments. You need an acceptance brand, a business model. You need consumers that value that you can offer an enhanced customer user experience when they are trying to pay. So that's what we're trying to do. Of course, that we see this as a key year for instant payments. We understand that many other countries in Europe will look into that and potentially develop solutions like value-added layers that can help to produce different type of rules operational that instant payments are not covering, like for merchant use cases mainly, and other type of regulations that are coming. So PSD2 was a regulation that was not was intended to cover many of the things that were not regulated back then in terms of fraud, customer authentication. But this was a regulation that it was mainly focused on cards, because that was the main payment method back then. But today that's changing. Instant payments should have a level playing field compared to cards, and what we are experiencing is that many of the things that we would like to accomplish, we can't, basically, because credit transfer, they have a different regulation to cards. So, for example, if I'm willing to have a subscription with Netflix, and it's not the same amount every month, that cannot do with that you cannot do with an instant payment. Why? Because you can. Because based on the credit transfer definition, you can do that. You cannot propose an exemption if the amount of the initial mandate is different than the one that is coming after. So what we're doing in our case, so we are building the ability for consumers that they can review all the subscriptions that they have with different providers, and they can do it into their banking apps. So this is something that today they cannot do with cards. So this is also an improvement that we understand. We increase this value proposition for the customers based on instant payments. Of course, that instant payments itself, it's not solving anything because merchants already have cards that can perform any type of transaction. But we are proposing is having a better user experience that for customers. So today we have transaction success rates even more than cards, and at some point. So this is and this is purely instant payment. So this is not something that it's already happening today. We understand that instant payments still need to cover a lot of ground in this sense. But hopefully, with regulation, as you were saying, we can level the playing field and achieve something that still we cannot compete with other type of payment method like cards. Thank you very much.
We have talked a lot about regulation, right? The instant payment regulation. You mentioned PSD2 and open banking as a regulatory topic. I think another very important driver for the payment industry overall is what we see in the development of technologies. And we have seen really a lot of innovation in the technology space over the last decade. Yeah, if I just reflect on now the frequent use of a mobile phone at the point of sale, if I think about what's happening with the DLD technology, with tokenization of cards, for example, but even technologies that influence the way companies are operating, yeah, like AI or Gen AI, right? Olivier, you're basically working in a technology company, right, at Thales. What's your perspective in terms of how does all this technology change affect the way payment methods are developing, affect the way consumers are paying at the point of sale?
Yes, in Thales, we are a technology provider, so we tend to be excited when new technology comes along. That's our job. But the reality is that today, as it was said before, the payment market is very fragmented. There's a lot of technology out there. I think the challenge is really to make sure that the users will actually use those technology. So adoption is key. And what do we need for adoption is, to your point, Martina, acceptance for proximity payment, right? And today, if you look at the landscape, the local schemes, the international schemes have deployed an acceptance network that is that is unmatched with any other method, right? So what our customers are asking us today is to deploy, let's say, technology that allow them to reach as many users as possible, as fast as possible. And we talk about regulation, we talked about technology. I think there was a very compelling event, at least for us, I'm sure for all the payment geeks in the audience today. In 2024, the European Union forced Apple to open their antenna and to allow alternative payment means to Apple Pay. It sounds like a small thing, but actually it's quite a storm, a very positive storm on the market where most of the wallet providers, the buy now, pay later provider, account-to-account provider have a way to launch their own payment methods that will allow them to go for proximity payment as well. Actually, we are very proud because we launched the first worldwide reference on HE iOS, as we call it, in Norway with VIPS. VIPS is the Bizum of Norway. It's a payment method everybody uses today. And we managed to deploy the solution in a few months. They went live 9th of December. And it has actually been the fastest launch we've ever had. So in 24 hours, in one day, they acquired 200,000 new users in one day. And in 1 month, 600,000 users, right? So it was tremendously successful on the technology side, but as well on the proposition to the end user as well. And they are going towards the million users today. So we are very confident that with the bricks existing today, if we manage to put them together, we can deploy, let's say, successful payment methods on the market today.
Very good. So we have talked now about many payment methods that are here today. Yeah? We talked about APMs, about cards, about buy now, pay later, about instant payments. But obviously, we should also look into the future and into digital currencies, right? So we cannot talk about the future of European payment schemes without touching upon the digital euro. Yeah? And let me ask a provocative question to you, Martina, right? You may argue that if the digital euro is coming and if it's a wallet-based solution, right, in terms of the functionalities, it may be very similar to what the European Payment Initiative has developed in terms of Vero. What's your perspective on that, right? Is the digital euro too similar to APMs like Vero? What's the value add of a digital euro from your perspective, if there is any?
I mean, I hope you don't ask me to justify what's the value add of a digital euro. No, to the point, is it too similar? It's, of course, yeah, we are also saying we want to support the sovereignty, the independence of the European payment landscape. And in this sense, it's similar. Yes, it might be a wallet, but honestly, do you see the ECB tomorrow integrating merchant loyalty programs? I don't see that. Or managing merchant pre-dispute and consumer protection? That will not fly. That's not possible for a central bank, besides if we totally change the role of a central bank. So, but I mean, more overarchingly, honestly, whether the ECB does that or whether it goes ahead or not, it's actually not our topic. We have now 31 million users. This is nice after a couple of months, but that's not where we want to be. Of course, we want to grow. So whether the ECB launches the digital euro or not, for me, it will not change anything. And beyond that, I think everybody is focusing very much on the digital euro, but let's not forget that there is something else which is voted, which is politically or from a regulatory perspective way more advanced, which is the digital identity. So I think before we talk about the digital euro, I think we will see digital identity-driven solutions, which personally, I think, could have quite some interest because we clearly see use cases where it's interesting to combine payment and digital identity. So my short answer is, if the digital euro comes, happy to cooperate. We already did that in the past, happy to integrate it. Because we believe in the wallet concept and we think that a wallet, I mean, we are not the ayatollahs of the instant payment. What we are saying, we think we need a wallet, and instant payment is a very nice way to leverage this. But we are not exclusive on instant payment, so it could integrate more of the digital euro or cards. What we have to cater for is what the consumer wants and what the merchant wants. So having said that, we are fully open, and yeah, we have some discussions with the ECB, but I think it's also very much on the ECB needs to find their way. You know, will they still continue with the offline functioning? I hear that this is under question. So we will see when it's ready. We are happy to integrate and to cooperate. But otherwise, if it doesn't change anything, we anyhow have to continue because we think that otherwise we cannot leverage this great opportunity of the instant payment regulation.
Thank you very much. We have now talked about many different payment methods, right? And also different parties acting in a payment ecosystem, right? So the question I would have, I think to Fernando, to Olivier, maybe also to you, Robert, is basically topic of partnerships, right? How are you thinking about partnering with other parties in that ecosystem, yeah, to create viable solutions at the end for the consumer or for the businesses to pay? So maybe a quick round around that. Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Well, our foundation is collaboration, right? So we won't stop at our borders. So the idea is if there are other solutions around Europe that are willing also to join forces and find these and build these bridges in order to reduce market fragmentation, it's a great thing that we should explore. So because in the end, this is one of the market failures that ECB is stating around the digital euro value proposition, that there's no way, a single way to pay in Europe with a European-born solution. So the idea is, why not talking to other solutions in Europe, trying to build bridges, trying to find a common place thanks to this pan-European infrastructure, which is TIPS, which is the instant payments rails. So that's what we are doing today. So as we were mentioning, so it's starting on P2P, because in the end it's the most simple way in order to offer this type of capabilities, because there's just one type of consumer on both ends. So let's see what happens. So the idea is, since we already are covering the value-added layer, so in the end we are bonding the phone number to the IBAN. The idea is to build these bridges with these other solutions. Consumers in the end will notice a difference. They will have the same user experience back home. So I'm with a friend in Portugal. I'm trying to send him money because of the beers that we enjoyed, and I can send him money through the same way I do it at home to another Bizum users. This is the foundation that we are trying to also build with Portugal and Italy, and starting from there, the idea is to cover more markets. So other markets that, of course, SEPA Euro is nice to have, because at the end this will be making things easier. But why not other type of countries that they do not have Euro? You still need to make things more complex due to cross currency. But I understand that TIPS today is also being developed in other countries that are not Euro, and the idea is to interconnect thanks to that. Once P2P is achieved, the idea is to cover other use cases. So in the end, e-commerce is the other use cases that we launch after P2P, and the last one should be POS. I mean, we already covered some of the topics why instant payments are not well covered at the point of sale, because Apple, because the acceptance network that the international current schemes have built during the past years. So why not, once we've covered this type of use case, trying to achieve interoperability in this sense. And just the last comment, I would like also to remark on what Martina said, because we are more aligned than what you were trying to emphasize, Markus, at the beginning, is the identity is the new money. So we think in the end that building this type of capabilities, when we are able to identify a customer based on the phone number, and we can validate their identity, because consumers, before authorizing a payment, they can verify that they are sending money to the right person. Why not move beyond that to offer this type of solutions that I can log in or register the same way I pay with Bizum, so with my phone number. So I can only give my phone number to the merchant, and then I consent to share some data that I will control. And you will be able to manage that information that you share into your banking app. So again, this is giving more control to the user, so I can realize I've shared this data with many merchants because I can access that in my banking app. And this is something that we are truly believe that can increase the competitiveness of the banking system. We understand FIDA is also coming, but in this way we just enable the phone number for many other use cases that you couldn't think before. So Bank ID is a good benchmark in the Nordics, because in the end it leverages the same idea. But we think that finding this type of collaboration also with the EIDAS and the identity wallet in Europe, that we will also enhance our position. Also, coming back to the digital euro. So if we can prove that we can reduce this market gap, we can reduce the market fragmentation through this type of initiatives, maybe the digital euro would be just another way that can be implemented into the network that we are building among each other. So reusing. That's the main thing that we are also discussing with the ECB. So not building a new network, so trying to collaborate and find a common place with the other solutions that are successful in Europe in order to increase adoption and make sure that the user understands the service that the ECB wants to offer.
Very good. Good to see that you are aligned, Fernando and Martina. Maybe also Robert and Olivier, what's your perspective on the partnership topic? Just to go a little bit into how does that merchant acquirer and the PSP and also a tech provider. Yeah, what's your perspective?
Sure. I mean, the core of what we do is partner up, partner merchants to different payment method providers. Right, one API connects to an abundance of APIs. Our biggest competitor in one field of what we do is also our biggest partner as an infrastructure provider, is also our biggest reseller in one other product that we do. Right, and leave it to the room to guess who that is. A bit of a riddle, but that's also the beauty of payments, right? We need each other. We need to partner up with each other, and only together we can serve our customers, which are consumers and merchants, best. Which is also, I think, an important thing to the whole wallet discussion, right? At the end, a wallet is something you download, you register towards, and then you have a funding source behind it. That funding source can be any of these payment methods. It can be these two, it can be the digital euro, it can be cards, right? But what's one thing the consumer doesn't want to do is download 12 different apps and want to have a different app per country they go to. So sometimes we get stuck into the thought of my payment method needs a wallet, but at the end, you just need a wallet to connect to all these different payment methods.
Very good. Olivier, what's your perspective? And then I open it up to have one or two questions from the audience as well.
And to rebound to your point, I think we are having exactly the same vision. I think we are trying to focusing our technology on having one SDK that sits in the phone, right? To have access to any payment networks, being local or international. We focus on one API, offering all the services that can be consumed on a case-by-case basis. But there's one interesting example about collaboration. It was your initial point. If you take the example of Click-to-Pay, for example, Visa and MasterCard are mandating the deployment of Click-to-Pay on different geographies with a certain date, with penalties if these dates are not fulfilled. We have been seeing ourselves collaborating with Visa MasterCard as their go-to-market technology provider to accelerate the transition they want to impose on the issuers, right? So the issuers or the Visa MasterCard don't necessarily have the time or the bandwidth to onboard all those issuers one by one. So they need partners like Thales who are basically able to take that load off their shoulder, but make sure that they are on time to deliver the service that they want. So
yeah, very good. So now I open it up to the audience, yeah? And we don't have a mic there, so you have to speak loud, yeah? Maybe you can say your name and then ask the question.
Thanks for sharing your views. You focus a lot on retail merchants. There's another half of the payment world which is more B2B related. You haven't really touched upon request to pay. I mean, there's a trend of e-invoicing coming. We've seen that quite successful already in Switzerland. So maybe you want to share your perspective also on these market trends currently.
All of us, or?
Maybe one answer and then we go to another question.
Yeah, I mean, request to pay, we have our version of request to pay in there. So you can request to pay. It's a way of functioning which is actually quite widespread in two of the markets where we operate. And yeah, I mean, for anything related to invoicing, we will launch next year in Luxembourg, where this is super established, where 60% of the transactions are already addressed by the national solution that we are migrating now. So definitely a use case that we are looking forward to and where we think we can expand the usage also into the other European markets.
Very good. You had also a question.
I have a question to Martina and Robert. Next week I will meet a merchant platform partner of ours, CGI. And what would be the pitch you would recommend me to pitch with a merchant partner to integrate Vero? Martina and Robert.
I would say integrate with Unzer, because we will connect to Vero. So we will make it happen, and then why Vero?
Yeah, but you see, the ecosystem thing works. So that's for us absolutely crucial. No, I think especially for broad platforms, the big interest is to have one connection for all the markets that are participating, instead of going market by market. Because when we speak with big platforms, they don't like that. For them, it's very cumbersome that they have to serve different solutions, because in the markets, yes, we have this fragmentation for the time being. So one connection. We think we have a price competitive advantage compared to cards. So I think that's also very important as an aspect. And depending on the platform, the subscription feature is also very important. But it depends on which kind of business the platform is in.
Very good. One other question, maybe? Yes.
Hi, I've got a question about the schemes, about the international schemes, which we didn't speak about at all, actually. We spoke about card, but I mean, they remain dominant in Europe. Even though we always talk about US schemes and us try to lose the dependency. Is that going to change in the next 5 years? Are the schemes going to lose their dependency and their dominance? If they are going to lose their dominance, what's going to replace them? And Martina, you can't answer that question because I know what you're going to say.
So maybe Olivier is a good choice to answer that question, right? Working as a car producer, I'm sure you're in touch with all of the schemes, yeah? So
I will not make the mistake to choose between them, right? So we try to answer whatever the market asks us to comply with. Still, this being said, I think the trend that we see today is that in terms of local schemes versus international schemes, we see the international schemes growing still today, right? At the expense of some of the local schemes. It's a fact today, right? So what the future will be made of, it's anybody's to answer. I think the local schemes have a lot to offer in terms of independence, in terms of technology, security. So we see local countries like Switzerland, Germany for sure, France, Belgium, really trying to invent the next step for them to take to be relevant on this market still in the long term, right? But it's a catch-up game. It's not easy.
very good. We have only 4 minutes left. So what I like to do at the very end is to give you the chance to have a very short closing statement on your perspective where the European payment landscape will go to and will develop towards. Yeah? So if you would have to say that, let's say in 30 seconds max, yeah? I had to pitch the panel in 60 seconds, so you have to do the last statement in 30 seconds. What's your perspective on where will the European payment scheme develop?
Where do we start?
Why don't we start with Fernando?
Okay. Well, you're hunting. So I think it will continue the same way, at least for the upcoming year. So we will see local champions that are growing, that are offering more and more use cases, account to account mainly, because I understand this is the trend that we are seeing. And just a single comment that I'm not aligned with Martina as before regarding the big players accepting local payment methods. So what we have experienced in thanks to Bizum is that really big merchants that lost their domestic acquirers a long way ago, thanks to Bizum, now they are coming back and offering with local players this type of occurrence with Bizum. So this is a good way also for really big merchants to offer a local payment method, and local acquirers are increasing their value proposition because in the end they lost this relationship years ago with many with these of the really big retailers.
Very good. Martina.
So I think the future will be definitely wallets because of the convenience, because of the control and the choice that they offer to the consumer. I think that's a value that the consumer is looking for. Again, I don't believe that we are still at the age of commoditized just payments handling. We are at the age of service-rich payments and convenience. So I think definitely wallets. What's in the wallet does not really matter. That's a question of us Europeans deciding whether we want to go on alternative rates and whether we get our act together or not.
Very good.
What the future will bring is new wallets and wallets that will fail, new payment initiatives and initiatives that will fail. It will keep on being dynamic and interesting. But I think the only thing that we're sure of is that we're going to have less plastic, we're going to have less paper and nickel. And we have much more of a merge between the on and offline world, right? Which will just ask for merchants and the funding sources behind it to adapt to that. So I think that is certain, and within that, may the best man win.
Very good.
And we'll connect to it.
And on technology side, I think we will see more and more technology converging together towards each other. But I think the point is that the complexity will be completely hidden for the issuers or the end user, right? So there will be fancy solutions where your wallet will be accepted on the card rails, but triggering an IBAN transaction in the back, right? But that will be completely transparent for everybody. The point is that those wallets will be working everywhere. So that's where we're focusing on, and that's where we believe the market will go to.
Very good. So thank you very much, Martina, Fernando, Robert, and Olivier, for taking us all on the journey through Europe, so to say, yeah, in terms of the different payment methods, and also how everything will develop in the future. I really enjoyed to moderate and chair this panel. Thank you very much for coming to Frankfurt. Thank you very much for being here. And I'm sure you will be around if there are follow-up questions from the audience, just after the panel. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here.